Hello, my name is Damian Phelan, and I'm a first-year PhD student in the Department of Economics at University College London. Now, my research interests are in the economics of education, and in particular, secondary education. And that's largely because before I embarked on a PhD, I spent 8 years working as a secondary school teacher in several of London's most disadvantaged, most deprived boroughs. Now, the students that I taught came from a diverse range of backgrounds, diverse in the sense of religious belief, gender, ethnicity. But one thing that they generally had in common is they came from low-income households, from disadvantaged backgrounds. Now, in the past year, I've also been working as a teaching assistant on UCL's first-year Introduction to Economics, or Economics 101 course. Now, my experience as a teacher and what I've observed in the past year as a teaching assistant has prompted me to think about how we manage the transition to university for all students, but particularly for students coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, and maybe think about how we can do it better. Now, we all want our students to succeed, and we know to succeed they need support. But we also want them to learn to become independent, to be able to manage their own time and their own studies and their own learning. And I think in that first year, sometimes we don't get the balance quite right. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, talk about some lessons that I think we can draw from really successful secondary schools, and then talk about how we can implement those lessons in lectures and maybe more generally. So let me start with what I learned from the inner city. Well, the first really crucial thing is schools that teach students from disadvantaged backgrounds really well have really high expectations of those students, really high expectations, really clear expectations on things like how to behave generally in the classroom, in the corridors, what do we want them to do in terms of participation in lessons, how good we want the homework to be, the standard of it, about punctuality to school, about punctuality in terms of handing in homework. And along with those high expectations are clear consequences for what happens when the expectations are not met. Now, something else that's a big characteristic of these successful schools is the structure. Every single moment of the day sometimes is managed. That can be from the transition from one class to the next class, how they move through the corridors. It can be the entrance into the beginning and the end of the lesson. It can be what's happening at lunchtime, the serving of food, the conversation that's being had, and even down to the discussion that takes place in class between students being managed. Huge amounts of structure. But the most important elements of a good, an amazing, outstanding secondary school is the relationships that form between the students and the teachers. Now, the teachers immediately must know the names, not only of their students, but as many students as possible. But they also search out opportunities for praise. They look for positive things that students are doing, let them know that they've done it really well, reinforce that that's a really, really good thing that they've done. And crucially, if the students have a setback, if they fail to meet those high standards, teachers will seek them out, have a conversation about it, talk to them about what went wrong, show them that they care, show them how to do it better next time. So to begin with, all of these systems are very rigid, they're very set, but as the students get older, things begin to change. The nature of the conversations that are had change, the nature of the praise changes, the nature of the reasons for the punishment changes. Everything becomes more nuanced, and we trust the students to understand that nuance and to be able to handle it. But the consequences are always there, right? Even up to the age 18, detentions are still there for when they fail to meet expectations. So what happens when they arrive at university? Well, the structure, the expectations, the relationships, all these things change. There are going to be assignments where there's no consequence for not completing it. Attendance to lectures, tutorials, no consequence for not turning up. Lecturers and teaching assistants who might not show much interest, who might not learn your name even. And what do we see generally happen? Over the course of that first year, attendance drops. Completion of non-compulsory assignments drops. Studying maybe is being left to the last minute instead of that consistent work throughout the year. And probably that is because there isn't that immediate consequence. There's only that long-term consequence. And we know we want students to be able to handle having long-term deadlines, but we need to maybe help them get there a little bit better. Now, I think this is particularly harmful for students from disadvantaged backgrounds who don't have maybe the family support, who don't have that experience within their family and friends of how to handle this transition to university. So how can we do it better? Well, I think first of all, in tutorials, having really high expectations and making them clear, making it clear we expect the students to come on time and participate. And in return, what do? We make sure we know their names from the very beginning. We make that effort to learn just that simple thing, who they are. And we use that to then make sure we have really interactive tutorials. We're asking them questions. We're asking them to discuss those questions in pairs, to discuss those questions in groups. And then we're asking them to feedback, right? And maybe we're asking them to put their hands up if they want to contribute, but maybe sometimes we're demanding that they contribute. We invite them using their name to tell us what they think or what their group thinks. And if they're expecting that right from the off, it's going to make those tutorials much more interactive. It's going to make it so that we can help build understanding and check understanding all of the time. And all of that is going to lead to the development of proper relationships. And that's going to help all of our students, and particularly our disadvantaged students, to succeed. And it helps us maybe hold them to account, to talk to them and offer them support when maybe they don't turn up, when they turn up late, or when they fail to complete an assignment. And that accountability can be really actually very helpful. Now, when it comes to lectures, I think we need to be in person. We need to make sure that our students are coming, that they are feeling like they can't just sort of sit back and let things wash over them, kind of watching through a screen, but they are there and they are engaging. I think a recording is useful for them to check maybe some details in the future, but it's got to be in person. And then it's got to be interactive. Same things as for the tutorials, asking them to discuss things, asking them then to feedback, making it so that the kind of fundamental thing is that they must turn up, they must listen, but they also must offer some thoughts. They must engage and actually make their brains work during those lectures. And setting out expectations that that's what you want from them at the beginning is really important, so they know that this is what's coming. And I think the reward in lectures can be not necessarily that you try and learn every single student's names, impossible if you've got 500, but maybe those students who want to contribute, who've put their hands up, or have given a particularly good answer. What if you learn those names? And what if you demonstrate in the next lecture that you remember those students? That will give them all that incentive to really want to engage, to really want to participate. Now, some more general thoughts, and these are the ones I'm least sure about. Do we make attendance compulsory? I'm not so sure, but I think it's something worth thinking about, because we know we want our students to actually turn up to benefit from every learning opportunity that we offer them. But how do we make it happen? I'm not 100% sure, but I think it needs some thought. With assignments and with feedback, do we make them a bit more regular? Do we shorten the time? Do we make it so that maybe it's every 2 or 3 days or a week, as opposed to these longer deadlines, just to help them learn to manage their time a bit more? But for me, the most crucial thing is when a student starts to maybe slip, stop attending, stop handing in assignments, that's what I think where it's really important there is a personal tutor or a course leader who steps in, has a conversation with them, figures out what's going wrong before it can escalate into just completely missing out on lectures and tutorials and lots of learning, and preventing the risk of that student then failing the year. I think someone with the authority that they recognize as an important person in the university can, with an early intervention like that, really turn things around. So everything that I've talked about, I do think is relevant for all students, but particularly for disadvantaged students. And really, I think every interaction that we have with our students is a chance to help them learn, a chance to help them develop. And that's why I think we need to do our best to make the most of every single opportunity that we have with our students. So I hope that you found that helpful. I hope you found it interesting. And thank you for watching. And I really hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.